Uh, this is a recording to make an important addendum to the recording that I made about the Douglas Murray Jordan Peterson conversation on the unheard thing. Listening to my own recording. I would almost like to slot in a leg to one of the points that I was making, in one of the general arguments that I seem to be making. It is striking that when I listen to this, how clearly it comes up in my mind as to what I was missing in terms of what I was relaying, going on and on about the unsubstantiated integrity, and the most of the video, in fact, is nothing to do with the Jordan Peterson and Douglas Murray conversation, where I just go into a full rant about the South African situation, political situation, where I'm trying to essentially illustrate the point about the unsubstantiated integrity being the kind of the key distinguishing factor as to when the left goes too far. I'd just like to draw that out now in adding a point which I think is sorely missing, in that so the basic answer is that the left goes too far when it calls for equality, and that equality is grounded in ideological terms that effectively is in terms of the integrity upon which the equality is demanded, is unsubstantiated. And so, in fact, it's using in its presupposition, it's claiming equality for an unsubstantiated integrity. Okay, now that was the point that I was kind of, perhaps not even illustrating directly, but talking about things and trying to weave the phrase unsubstantiated integrity into the different features of the ideology in which I see it operative. And I did not speak about a point which I think is which is integral to the operation of it, which is intervention. Because you see, the unsubstantiated integrity, along with the you see, I can't think of a good enough, because you see, the whole point of this is to come up with a short answer. If you don't come up with a short answer, you don't really have such a clever benchmark for when the left goes too far. And I obviously created a video that mainly just rants about the conditions in South African politics, which is like what I can't see from here, but I think the whole recording is at least 40 minutes, or perhaps it's even over an hour or something, but something like 40 minutes plus, in which I didn't give a short answer, which is not useful. But also, unsubstantiated integrity, I still think that is the primary answer to the benchmark of where the left goes too far. Obviously, the usefulness of using unsubstantiated integrity is that you can demand intervention in any case. You don't have to know the facts of the case, because the integrity that is being protected is unsubstantiated. You don't have to give a damn about what would be appropriate, or what would be the most pragmatic and cost-effective way to aid in development. You don't have to do any kind of metric. You just have to do everything and anything that is conceivably possible. You just have to concede to whatever demand is being made. Whoever represents this, whoever is the spokesperson, whoever, then it becomes the problem of representation in the ideology is incredibly strange. It becomes a kind of strange religion very quickly as to who gets to speak on behalf, and and somehow people who are not expert in any way get it's sort of the strange that there's a spirit in some kind of lowest common denominator that just has to be always right, and that it needs to have a kind of righteous figure come up. Okay, I don't want to illustrate this too much, although I find it necessary to illustrate the technical exploration of it, because otherwise it's very open to being caricatured by proponents of the social justice ideology. It would be too easy for them to break apart what you're saying and to misuse it very easily, perhaps to within whatever legal positivistic framework they would like to administer justice onto you, in their perversion of the state and of the legal framework, which it seems that is also something that is on the horizon in this country of South Africa. Okay, so just trying to come up with a smaller with a concise formulation. Unsubstantiated integrity. Equality in the name of unsubstantiated integrity. Yeah, I did also want to, there were points when I was listening to the last recording on the topic that this is an addendum to, where I thought it really was worth making the further point that because the integrity is unsubstantiated, it is without any kind of possible planning. It is beyond any bounds of any secular discussion or reasoned debate. It's beyond all of that. It puts it out of the realm of politics, because somehow that planning just belongs to some kind of strange, wisdom of the lowest common denominator of some crowd, that it's wisdom that belongs to the race itself or something. It has some very convoluted, strange racialist thing in it, that has that, what I was describing as its implicit supremacist claim that because whatever it comes up with is without contest, and it cannot be, or they'll make some claim like, it can be debated, but can only be debated from inside or something like that. As if this kind of fascist style of political incubation, this idea that it's not yet born, it's this sort of unborn racial pride that needs to be rehabilitated above all else. And this is the problem, is that it's so seductive to latch onto that narrative, but the problem is that narrative is the narrative that conceals the corruption and the exploitation, and the idea that no, we have to work that out in-house. Who are the people inside, just trying to think of that, like the call is coming from inside the house or whatever, like we have to root out our own problem or something like that. But just to make that space, you have to, you're claiming a kind of ethnocentrically based territory, which essentially means that you've already committed yourself to a separate but equal development, bullshit, which, with the history of South Africa, makes it incredibly ironic when you have essentially broken the Rainbow Nation model, which, there's nothing wrong with it. The Rainbow Nation model is brilliant. It literally is brilliant. But when you apply to it the social justice interpretation of multiculturalism, it becomes, essentially the Rainbow Nation can't withstand that kind of convoluted racism, where somehow there's no communication between these groups. It has to be restrained, and it has to be historically respectable according to these weird ideological things where everyone is forced to be a representative of their group, and they can have no authentic individual experience dealing with one another. They have to be emissaries of these lived experiences, which are these kind of collective bubbles, which have these pristine boundaries in some sense that are only enforced by this very disgusting and toxic policing that we get from the radio hosts like Eusebius Makaitis, from all these identity politics infused marshals of political of this weird sort of politics that are always calling upon the executive to intervene and arbitrate over social issues according to this ideology and the formulas in this ideology. But okay, I'm trying to find a way to kind of generalize a lot of these formulas, I guess, in terms of where the so-called left or progressives go too far, and that would be that unsubstantiated integrity, because it's also the unsubstantiated element of that is what means that they don't actually have to lay out a workable plan. It can just be as crude as, well, we just need to redistribute wealth. The problem is that we just need to redistribute property and power. That if we just redistribute the commodity of power, that it just kind of commodifies everything in life into some kind of quantity that can just be spread. That forms into the unsubstantiated thing, is because when you say that integrity itself is a kind of systemic currency or commodity that just needs to be redistributed, where integrity itself is a kind of culturally relative a feature of reality. Yeah, so I do feel like I'm making a very big substantive claim when I say that they are promoting a kind of presupposition of unsubstantiated integrity. I mean, like, they might say, oh no, well, obviously we believe that everyone's integrity is equal, and then as much as equal as representatives of their groups, and their groups are accounted for by a systemic survey of the power between groups and of groups in society, or something like that. So they can say that their rhetoric is one of equality of integrity, but essentially what they have done is they've robbed the concept of integrity from everyone, that no one has any integrity. It just becomes an ideological integrity, so integrity is just a kind of sub-definitional component to their ideological schema. So, the word integrity is unsubstantiated in any non-ideological version. Yeah, so I guess I'm still trying to refine this idea slightly, but and obviously the ideological function of this is so that they can the word be so that they can have a framework that dictates intervention, that they can sort of elicit. I can't even. I don't even know if I pronounce that differently. Because that's a homophone. That I'm not saying it's. I'm not saying that it's illicit, but I'm saying that they can cause it to occur, or they can direct it, and they can preside over the necessity of intervention. And they can do that in their description of life, which is the system, the ideological conception of the thing that we are all equally subject to. So, I mean, already the premise is that we're all dominated by society, and then it's how to reduce that into something in which you can maximize some kind of progress of liberty within that framework. And so because of the premises, and because of the entities which, are actually quite arbitrarily tracked by this ideology. Because, I mean, you can essentially have the same ideology, just don't track groups, just track individuals. And then if you just track individuals, you can actually see that there are traits that people have, which, as long as you don't get into the trap of defining them as belonging to groups, but just as belonging to individuals, you can actually see what traits need to be developed in a population to make it more successful. What trade-offs are being made when you have a culture that has certain values over other values. That is something that, you can't expect there to be an equal outcome from decisions. Decisions carry with them consequences. And the idea that some consequences are historically privileged, I mean, is, how would it not be? And the idea that you can then just take history into your own hands and do things that are effectively revenge or illegal or something like that, because you'll make better progress in some kind of expedited fashion. I mean, apart from the barbarism implicit in that, but that it's not even the optimal solution. Especially when you actually contrast it against what would a positive maximized plan be for maximizing development and transformation. And then you realize that, well, actually by treating everything like a zero-sum game, you end up gutting the intellectual resources that you have. You end up destroying institutions of learning because they need to be decolonized, or whatever disgusting racialist rhetoric you've got going, where you end up essentially, just as Hitler lost the war for the Nazis because every decision was made on these ideological grounds of keeping the pretense of this incredibly rigid narrative that has to be tended to, so much so that you can't even look at reality because you have to look at it through the lens of this moralistic, what is a kind of groupthink slave morality, essentially. that you become more a slave to just infecting and being a proper proponent and advocate of the morality of this system that you're so invested in being dominated by, that you have to play the game that system, that the model of that system imprints upon you. I mean, the mark of a beast has never been a more socially. I mean, partly I find it very convenient because you've always had people with these sorts of consciousnesses. At least now there's a political alignment that these people have, so at least it's possible to avoid them. Obviously, it's a lot darker when you're living in the country in which this is effectively disrupting politics. This is effectively ensuring a new generation of political exploiters taking power of state resources and abusing them because they can easily fulfill the recipe of this rhetoric, while they can brutalize and be essentially political thugs and descend the country into inflammatory racialist rhetoric, which means that political accountability and actually intelligent policy is an afterthought, essentially, because of what can be gained in the kind of immediate seizure of some kind of moral aggrandizement of this is actually much better. This point that I'm trying to make is it needs to be contextualized according to the lecture that I tried to construct over beta quadra values, in terms of how academia has been denigrated as an institution and corrupted. That slots in here much better. But anyway. Okay, so actually, I mean, I started off this video trying to say that I would like to refine something that I heard in a video, and I still end up making a recording, which, if you add this time onto the other video, is well over an hour, and I don't have a short answer, so I guess, yeah, can't do much better. But I think that this thinking has the seed of something that you can get a short... It's work towards making a short answer of where the left goes too far.